Live from Atlanta, Georgia, it's the Zach Ballinger Show, where we help you find your direction through passion and purpose. My name is Zach Ballinger. I'm your host. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We are streaming live via YouTube. So if you have any questions out there, pop them into the comment box. We'll make sure to get to them. Also, during the year, always email me, Zach at zachballinger.com. We will ask our guests any questions you have when it comes to all things career. Juliette, thank you so much for being a part of the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we really appreciate it. And I just got off this week. I have spoken in front of 3 college campuses this week. So I've been pretty busy on the road. And in your biography, you talked about you published, it says you published and authored Sharing My Lens, a college experience in which Juliette shares some of the gems that proved to be valuable in achieving an engaging academic experience throughout college. Can you explain that a little bit?
So I was offered the opportunity actually to write a book a few years ago, and in trying to really discover what message I was going to share, I remember having a conversation with one of my mentees, and we were speaking about all those things that we wish high school prepared us for when it came to college, and that kind of had a light bulb pop up in my head, and I kind of I guess it's almost like, I don't want to say it's a letter to myself, but it's first to my younger self, right? All of those things that I wish I'd known going into college. I was actually a student taking college classes in high school. So my experience may have been a little bit different than that of my peers, but I found that I was always having to jump between the high school level stuff and the college level stuff. And even that was not enough to prepare me for college. And so this book, it kind of gives a number of gems, the importance of self-awareness first, really understanding your learning style, understanding how you function, and creating a learning environment that's conducive to that. Second, just emphasizing some of the skills that we don't necessarily always appreciate: reading, writing, public speaking. And lastly, the relationship that you have with your network and building your brand as it relates to your network. So
What's the biggest thing? So let's say I'm a freshman right now in college.
yeah.
What advice do you have for me entering in when it comes to all things career? What do you give that student who says, A, I don't really know what I want to do, B, I don't know where to go, and C, I'm trying to pick a major? How do you answer that?
Yeah. So what I would do is focus more on the purpose or the goal, not necessarily the title. I think a lot of us go into college and we say, I want to be this thing and I want to be that thing. And then we take on a major, right? Because to be a doctor, there's a path you take. To be a lawyer, there's a path you take. To be an engineer, there's a path you take. And then what happens is we start to discover that we're not very much connected to that specific title as we go along our journey. So my biggest recommendation, and this is something I do with my high school students, even my middle school and my elementary school students, to really think of what you want to do, and then see what majors fall in what you want to do. Look up some of the professional associations related to some of the things that you want to do. So if you know that you want to work with kids and you want to give counseling to kids, maybe consider psychology or consider counseling and professional associations, and see all of the myriad of options that you have available to you, and then see which one of those pique your interest. Because hey, you may not become a clinical therapist, but maybe you might be able to work for a company that conducts research and so on and so forth. Or you might be able to work in a school, or work at a shelter, and so on and so forth. So I think it's more looking at the purpose and the overall goal instead of focusing so much on one specific title or job.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So what if, you're a junior in college and you don't like your degree, you're getting ready to enter in your senior year, what should you do?
I mean, there's one of two things. I think everybody should have a space to be their authentic self, their best authentic self. So if it really isn't working for you, and you're that passionate about changing your major, by all means. I'm very big about starting what I finish, and this is me personally. I found that depending on what you're studying in school, there is a lot of wiggle room once you graduate, right? I know communications people who studied English and communications, and they're working in marketing and advertising. So there is wiggle room. It's not always about 100% about the degree, but there's also a networking portion to it. So when you're able to connect with people in the real world, you may find that whatever you took with you from college, there's a way to use it to fit into whatever you want to do. Hey, if you studied nursing or medicine and you find that you're more passionate about information technology, maybe you might provide value as a healthcare tech, right? Coming up with different types of technology that would prove valuable in the healthcare industry, even though you're not working in a hospital by the bedside taking care of a patient. So again, you don't have to quit. It's just really trying to figure out that path after you graduate.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the reason I ask is I have students all the time that after my talks, they would say, you know what, I really don't like what I'm doing, but I'm a senior. I've only got a couple more courses.
Yeah.
My brother came to me, and I would always give the same advice I would my family to other people that I speak to. And I would say
Right.
this: you can change your major. That's not a problem. I think we focus a little bit too much in on it. Obviously, if you want to be a doctor, there's certain science courses that you're going to have to go back and take. We get that.
Right.
But what I told my brother is he's a senior in college, and he said, I don't want to be an engineer, but I'm getting ready to finish my engineering degree. I only have a semester left. I said, then you need to finish it. And,
Right.
he looked at me, he said, well, I thought you were the passion guy that wanted people to do what you wanted to do in life. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And he didn't know. And so I said,
Right.
well, if you don't know, you need to finish your degree, and then we can take
Right.
that step. And so now, success story, he's in veterinary school right now, getting ready to enter
Right.
it, and he found his passion that way. So I agree with you to that extent. I always encourage students to finish if they made it almost to the finish line. And
Right.
then we can worry later about it. Go ahead.
Right. And I mean it I think what I realize is I think we put so much emphasis on, and don't get me wrong, the education is very important, but that is not going to be the sole determination of your path to success, right? Or your path in accomplishing your dreams. And so I think maybe because of how society has conditioned us, we're always like, oh my goodness, if I make it close to, for example, the finish line, junior year, even senior year. I know people who literally had a semester left to graduation and they said, forget about it, I'm enlisting in the military. And they dropped the entire thing. So I do agree with you in many ways. I also feel that we're planning for a future that's uncertain. You really never know until you try, right? You never really know until you try. You can be learning about engineering, but applying it is a completely different ball game. And I think we also need to give ourselves a chance to kind of dip our toes in the pool a little bit. See what the different experiences are like, look at what the different ways are that we can apply what we've learned. Because again, I think we only get a fraction of the picture as to what we can do with our education. But we never know until we've actually graduated, until we start networking, until we get into the real world. You step into a company and you're working with other engineers and you realize, wait. What I thought engineers do is not only limited to what engineers do. There's so much more that I could do. So
Juliet, we have some teachers that actually listen to the show. And so I want to get kind of high level with this. When you were talking earlier, you mentioned that high school really didn't prepare you for a career or kind of what you were doing in college. I would echo the same sentiments. But a lot of teachers says, where do I begin? What can we do better at the high school level to help people? Because I think two things we fail at in this country is, and I'm really passionate about it, and I get off on my soapbox, but the two things we're in school to do is A, learn about finances and how to learn about our money and what to do after we graduate. And then number two is our career, what kind of career we go into. And that's the whole reason and purpose of school. but we don't teach that. And it just seems so backwards to me. So, how can high schools do a better job of preparing their students for careers or college?
Well, first, let me say that I'm a child of a teacher, so I love teachers very much. They're some of my favorite human beings on the face of the planet. I do also show grace and compassion because I do understand that teachers are under a lot of pressure to meet curriculum, right, or curricula that they've been handed. They have to cover a number of things versus maybe in college or university, you have a little bit more wiggle room because if you wrote a book, you can use that as part of the syllabus and so on and so forth. So I just want to put that out there that I understand that that exists. But and I'm sitting from the lens of being a private tutor. So what happens is my students come home after school and then I get hit with all of the stuff that they learned but they didn't retain, and I have to deal with it, right? Um, and so I think making things more practical and more relatable, at least, within your power, I think that is one great step in the right direction. I know when I was in high school, and again, I took college classes, but I was only taking college classes because my mother put me in college classes. I tried to quit. I told my guidance counselor snitched on me and told the head of the program. He snitched on me, told my mother. I found myself in a meeting and they're like, yeah, you're not going anywhere. You're staying in these college classes. But even then I huffed and puffed and huffed and puffed because I couldn't relate to what I was learning. What does the Pythagorean theorem have to do with me trying to sign some checks in the future, right? I'm not going to have to determine what the angle of a triangle is in the business world, but let's say there was something relatable, let's say I was able to look at a piece of land, a piece of real estate, right? A lot of people, they're interested in going into real estate. And I looked at that and looking at acres and measurements and so on and so forth, and making that practical, because now I'm kind of like, oh, if I am an engineer, if I'm an architect, if I'm a construction worker or whatever, I can relate to that as a kid, and that also piques my interest, and it also gives me a sneak peek into maybe a little bit of what I would be doing if I were to go into the real world. So I think that's really one first step in making things more practical for students and making them much more relatable that they can identify with. I think those would pique their interest a little bit more. It doesn't hurt to tap into their interests. Boys, a lot of my boys, they like video games. I had one that had this obsession with Fortnite to the point that even when he had his lessons, he would promise his friends that he'd be back in 5 minutes and come to me and tell me, Miss Juliette, you got 5 minutes to teach this lesson because I have my friends waiting for me. But I had to tap into his interest in technology. And sometimes I had to take the first few minutes of the lesson and show him the back end of my website where there was all the codes and the numbers and so on and so forth. And then when I tie it back to him learning math and him learning his sight words and so on and so forth, and he understands, wow, I can understand those codes. I can do that better when I can learn my sight words and I can learn my math applications, then it becomes more practical and it becomes something that he can relate to. So that would be, I think, like the most primary thing. I think the other things, that would be more of an administrative thing, but we need to change up the curriculum. And I don't know how much Common Core is working. If you ask me, it's not as comprehensive, if that makes sense. I think kids are just learning not even steps, but I don't know. I haven't really figured it out if it's steps or systems, but it's not something that they're soaking in and they're really understanding and retaining is what I find.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. Make something practical that is for them too. But also I work a lot with administrators because education's at a local level, so there's a lot of different
Yeah.
variations. But obviously, there's state tests that you have to pass. You have to learn a certain reading and math. I
Right.
get that. But I think where I've seen it implemented as I travel around the United States, there's certain districts, there's certain schools where students are 10 times more prepared for career talks than they were. And so, for example, at my own high school, they have me come every year and talk
Mhm.
about career development skills. And that's nothing that they have to do. It's
Right,
45 minutes that they carved out. All they have to do is kind of organize it.
right,
And what happens is that what I found is these students, when I get to college and talk to them, they've
right.
already built a LinkedIn page. They've
Oh,
already
yeah.
they've already taken the strength finder tests. They've taken
Mhm.
DISC assessments. All these
Right.
things that we do at a senior in college when we probably should have been doing that in high school.
Probably even
It's
in the workplace after college.
Exactly, and one more thing, and I'll just add it for this, and it's not a shameful plug, I promise, but, the
Mhm.
Zach Ballinger show is a great example of that. Schools have been implementing the Zach Ballinger show because what I do, besides this interview that we talk about, just by helping people with their careers, is I am creating a career library where people can go
Right,
around and say, "Hey, do I wanna be a detective? Do I wanna be a police officer? Do I wanna
right.
be an engineer?" You can network with those people, you can get a formal interview, and I don't think we do enough job of career exploration in this.
Right. I completely agree. Interestingly enough, I with my students, and some of them were like, I believe, like in that tail end of elementary school when I did this with them. But I had them do a Myers-Briggs assessment. And then I had them do it- uh the preferred learning style assessment. And after that, it really became a conversation of, okay, so what space works best for you, right? For my high schooler, in looking for colleges, her questions weren't just where are the parties at, right? Or student loans, or is this an Ivy League school? But it was really, is this school the right fit for me? Right? If I'm a little more introverted and I function better in a smaller classroom, is it better for me to be in a school where I'm sitting in a lecture hall with 120 students? And then when she thinks of that, then she goes into a career space. Am I better in a space where, if I'm more introverted and I work better alone, where I'm constantly having to be overwhelmed with people interaction? Or am I better working in spaces where I have projects I can work on independently while still being able to interact with other people in my environment? So I completely agree with you on that. I know I all of these personality and learning styles I didn't learn until I was doing my master's, which I think when I look back on it, it is wild. Um, because I think I would have had a better hold on my academic journey, especially in undergrad. I think I also would have been able to have better conversations with previous managers and previous bosses as it pertained to my training. Now, because I know how I learn, in the workplace, I'm able to tell a manager or a senior colleague, hey, this is not working for me, right? Are you able to present it to me in this way? Are we able to take this steps? Or you're going a little too quickly without feeling ashamed about it. And I think, starting with that in school, encouraging students to be able to say, this learning style doesn't work for me, but giving them the autonomy to say, if it doesn't work for me, here are some of the tools and resources that I can use so that I am learning and so that I am engaged and so that I am retaining what I'm receiving.
Right, and I think like you just said earlier, if you tie back the coursework to a career that they
Mhm.
may do, I hate math, and that's one of my weaknesses. I still hate it.
Right.
Calculus, you name it. But if
It's that
you
Pythagorean theorem that I hate.
when you mention that, it gives me cold chills. So,
Right.
so but if you were able to create the scenario where, okay, and you were able to create it somewhere around the interest, let's say compounding interest, and you were able
Right.
to do algebra, and you're like, this is the why you should think about this because your bank account would be this after you get through. Instead of
Right.
here's a two-step equation solve the problem. So
Right.
that's where I think you getting back to where you tie it into real world concepts, and that's
Right.
an overhaul, and we can have that probably need to be on another podcast where two career nerds get on there and discuss that. But
Right.
you've done a great amount of work just by so just talk to me about what you've got going on. You've got some books. Do you have a podcast or anything
Okay.
like
So
that?
I have a lot. I do have a lot going on. I'm actually a student as well. And I think my students can, I'm doing my PhD, but my students can relate to it because sometimes they're like, Miss Juliette, I don't want to do these 3 paragraphs. And I'm like, do you want to write 40 pages instead? Because I'll give you my
Nope.
40 pages. Right. But yes, I am in the last leg of my PhD working on my dissertation. I do have JUNURI. So I do a lot of that is tutoring, academic coaching with my students. It's very much personalized to their learning needs and their interests and so on and so forth. And on the other end of that, I do professional job preparation. So resume building and also just giving counsel in a way that, you know, people are ready to enter into the workplace and navigate their work environment, and also create safe spaces that they can perform well in. So that's JUNURI. Second to JUNURI is a publishing company. I do have one book. It's Sharing My Lens, the College Experience. We might see it more in the future, but that's under JUNURI Publishing. And third to that is NURILENS, my eyewear collection, which is kind of left field, but I have a wooden eyewear collection. I love glasses, so I have that. And then the last project, which is still ongoing, is actually a Haitian Creole language learning management system, where we tried to provide a more comprehensive approach to learning the Haitian Creole language, and also comprehensive approaches for Haitian Creole learners to learn other languages.
So Juliet's not very busy, guys, as you can
At
tell.
all, at all. I get a lot of sleep.
So where can people find you though? Let's say somebody out there relates to you, or they're a student that might need some more help, or they want to connect
Right.
with you on social media. Where can they, what's the best place to go to?
You can visit my website. I'm also on Instagram and also Facebook. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. My website is Juliette Nuri Nelson, JULIETTE, N as in Nancy, URI, Nelson, like Nelson Mandela, JulietteNuriNelson.com. On Instagram, I am also Juliette Nuri Nelson. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Juliette Nelson, and it should have a link to everything that I do, whatever you're interested in. And feel free to just say, hey, I saw you on the Zach Ballinger show. So I can like prioritize and respond, because I'm distracted. I have my dissertation I'm focusing on. So
I mean, you're not busy, so you should have.
absolutely. I should be waiting for them to
No,
reach
we
out.
really appreciate it. We know how busy you are. Guys, 2 things. So what we'll do is we'll pop that website into the comments section when this is published. So you'll be able to go right to her webpage, connect with her there. And then the other thing is that she's on LinkedIn. So you guys ask me a lot of times, well, who do I connect with on LinkedIn? Well, pretty much everybody that comes on the show has offered you to connect through LinkedIn, and Juliette just did that. So please add her, and make sure when you add people, always, I try to remind you guys, put a note in there, because we get spam, we get people trying to
We
do.
have a lot of people trying to tell us how we can scale up our our
Right.
LinkedIn
Right. I
platforms.
usually get 10 spams a day. So
Yeah,
just put in the comment section where you heard it from, and Juliet will accept you, no problem. So
absolutely.
you guys got those resources. Again, thank you so much for joining. We really
Thank
appreciate
you for having me.
it. Guys, until next time, this is the Zach Ballinger